Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Winning Mantras. Today we have the national winners of Vantage 2020. This is an initiative by Dare to Compete to ignite the spirit of competitiveness amongst young B schoolers. And let's see how and what this team has to say about their winning secret. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you all? And before we begin with the intricate details, I would like you guys to talk a little bit about Vantage 2020.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead with that. So I think Voice Vantage 2020 was all about reimagining the future, where this is one of the most prestigious B school competitions, which we as students look forward to. So the topic this year revolved about the future of work, workforce, and workplace for voice to be specific. So this was something which was relevant to the current times, and this made it all the more interesting for us to work on a topic which is relevant and interesting at the current scenario. So there were three major deliverables which we were responsible for throughout the case. The first one was with regard to the aspect of future of workforce. So here we were supposed to come out with a end-to-end workforce strategy on how voice can identify and build the talent for the future. So this was quite an interesting aspect because you had to look into the aspects of the HR, not only with regard to the new employees, but also to the existing one, how exactly they can cater to them. So the second deliverable was with regard to the workplace innovation. So we all know that how COVID has impacted the safety and compliance of employees in general. So when one wants to come back to their office, you have to make sure you create that safe bubble for them to get back and feel safe to work again. So how would what suggestions can we give voice to help them create that safe bubble? So this was the second deliverable, and the third one was an interesting one with regard to the new products and services. So we know voice has been dealing with technology like cutting edge technology, but there are situations where you have to capitalize with the need arises. So this was where we had to come up with an technology or process which voice can help assist their clients to gain that competitive edge owing to the pandemic. So these were the major deliverables and what the case was all about this year.
Okay, it looks like a very interesting competition, Shreesha. Thank you so much for sharing that bit with us. Now, I would like one of you to talk about how the rounds of the competition were and what was the structure of the competition.
So yeah, so looking at the competition, I think there were three major rounds, like Shilpa mentioned. So I think the first round was where it's quite you have a lot of teams which have taken entry, and it was surprising and overwhelming for us to make it to the next round. So it was basically round one, round two, and then national finals. So this was the basic framework for the competition. And I think we had two tracks. So you had the first year track and the second year track, which were running in parallel and on similar days. So it was quite an intense competition where it's we didn't know what exactly the other teams were presenting, and you have to be on the top of your game every day. And this is what made sure that we cater to every aspect of things. And like we said, a voice, they made sure that we were aware of how exactly each round is panned out, and they were open for communication throughout. So that was one amazing thing which we have to acknowledge the team for. And going by the rounds, the deliverables almost remain the same, but we were allowed to come up with a few extra slides moving ahead. And it just came down to the depth at which we went to the presentation. So as we moved to the national finals, we made sure that every point was ticked off. So we had about four teams in the national finals, and this was about eight in round two. So this was the basic framework throughout the competition.
Okay, okay. I am sure that the B schoolers out there who would be watching you, who would be watching this video, will have a very clear idea of how the entire competition works and what the entire system of the competition is. Now, I would also like you guys to talk about how you came up with an idea and what was your thought process. Where did you begin, and what came up? What you guys came up with finally? Your idea of making a presentation. What all are the intricate parts of making a presentation? I would like you to shed some light on that now.
So I think the most important part, and this has been stressed upon by, I think almost everyone gives the same advice, that is reading the case and rereading the case multiple times. It is a cliche, but it is essential. So the thing is, when you reread and keep reading the case, you discover new aspects to the case, which you might not have realized earlier. So even one of our key solutions, it was 2 words from a 3-pager document. we picked it up directly from the case, what they were looking for. So like I said, reading the case, that is essential. Then another aspect is actually knowing the company. So you have to thoroughly research about the company, go through all their current news, then their social media. We have LinkedIn, Instagram. You look up hashtags on Instagram or Twitter, those aspects also. And another thing was, while creating a presentation, you have to keep in mind that your submission deck and your presentation deck, two very different things. So when you're creating a submission deck, you have to pack in your content thoroughly, because that's where you'll be putting in a lot of ideas and they'll just be reading it. But when you're creating a submission deck, a presentation deck, that's when you have to make it more visual. It has to be more visually appealing to the eyes, and you have to make sure that you focus more on the explanation that you're giving out. So those were the key aspects.
Okay, sounds great and sounds like a great advice. And I think that moving forward, these people will have a good idea of how to make presentations and what to keep and what not. On these lines, did you ever face any challenges when you were working on your idea or while you were brainstorming your idea? And if yes, what were they and how did you overcome them?
All right. So this was actually something that we understood throughout the course of the journey through VOIS, the case study. So initially, many of the suggestions that we had suggested, we realized that several of them VOIS currently or were in the process of implementing it. So then we had to see how we could augment our solutions better and how we could cater to all of the different segments, the different departments that they have. And many of the insights that we got, in fact, were during our mentorship round. So we had one with we had a round right after the national finalists. We had a round there, and our mentor was Rajiv, who was the vice president, and he gave us a lot of insider views on what VOIS was actually looking for in the different solutions. We had to cater to the timeline as well as the scalability of our solutions. So that we understood only when we went through all of the different sources, like Nishka had mentioned, through the Instagram pages or through the LinkedIn pages, all of their social media handles, and trying to understand what it exactly is that VOIS currently has and how we could make it better for them. So yeah, that's something that we had to struggle with initially, but eventually through the course of the journey that we actually worked on it to make it better.
I actually agree with you, Namita, on the fact that it's very important for you as a team to understand what the company stands for and what it is already doing to start working on your case. Because if you do not have an idea of that already, it is going to be very difficult for you when you move forward with your case finally. Okay. Also, when you were presenting finally in front of the jury, were there any presentations or any ideas that the other teams presented that took you by surprise?
So actually, we weren't really allowed to see what the other teams were up to. So yeah, that was, we were completely in the dark about what other teams were doing.
So yeah, actually during the presentation, they'd call in the team that was to present, and it would just be the jury members, and there were few employees from VOIS as well. So in between different teams, we didn't really see the other presentations. So it was just based on our feedback from the mentors that we worked on it further.
Okay, sounds great. Now let's talk about the jury. What did the jury expect from the participants, and what did they expect from you as a team? What all questions did they ask? And what was that one focus of the jury or the judges? What was that one particular question that they were really focusing on?
So I think the important aspect was that as to the questions they asked, and also had a feedback session where I actually personally asked this question as to what exactly are you looking for. So this was post the competition, so I think that'll help me answer this a little better. So I think the key parameters on which they gauge a presentation would be the clarity in your ideas. So when we are presenting, so we would have done days of surveys or research based on a topic, but you just have say 10 to 15 minutes to portray it across. So you have to make sure that you have the clarity in your idea when you're presenting. And the key aspect the company would be looking for would be the feasibility of them. So at the end of the day, if you have a few topics which can be implemented at the office, there is nothing like it. So this is one another important aspect which they look into. But a personal suggestion would be, if you can rope in the financial feasibility of the ideas you give it, there's nothing like it. So that is one aspect. Probably it can just be for 30 seconds or a minute if you can talk on the financial feasibility. So that is where you strike a chord with the jury in general. And I think, coming to the one question, there's nothing in particular, but what I would say is, when you're being questioned on something, some of your ideas, it is important to stand your ground and back it up with data, with why exactly have you come to that idea or conclusion. So that is an important part. And I think the jury was amazing throughout. And I think Dan, Rami, and Suren, they kept us on their toes throughout. So I think we have to be open to the questions which come our way, because there was one, I think, by Suren, where it was not related to the case. So it was like, what were the challenges you faced while working on the project in general? So that was something which caught us off guard, but I think we did quite all right apart from that.
That's very interesting. And I think it's very important to keep in mind what the jury is looking for when you start your presentation, or even assume what the jury would be looking for in this case, or from this idea that you're presenting to them. That will give you a very good idea of what to present and what to have in your presentation in the first place. Now, let us move forward and talk about corporate competitions, in particular, Vantage. How did this competition in particular leave a mark on you? Or for that matter, what all learnings did you garner from this competition?
All right. So I like to take that up. So this process, this competition especially was very special to us, especially because that this is, I mean, we are actually the workforce of the future, and several of the ideas or the solutions that we presented, it is something that we could implement for ourselves as well. Now, since we haven't really met each other, we are just meeting virtually, and we had to collaborate online, and there were several challenges that we may have faced. But throughout the process, we realized through the different studies that we did for the case study, we got a little glimpse into what the future would be looking like. And most of our solutions, in fact, we kept that in mind as well: the hybrid workforce and the hybrid workplaces that will be coming up in the future, as well as the digital transformation that several companies are undergoing. So all of these things we catered to in our solution. We kept that in mind, and that is something that was a key takeaway throughout this competition as well.
That sounds great. That sounds really great. Now, but when we talk about participation in such corporate competitions, and I believe that you guys are participating from home and you're participating virtually and haven't even met each other, how important do you think these corporate competitions are, and why should one even make efforts of participating in it?
I believe competitions are very important part of MBA, because it actually lets you put the skills you learn from class and every knowledge you have acquired from your friends and everything into practice. You're having a real live case, which they might implement in their office. So that is one. And secondly, it's twice as much important in a virtual scenario, because we all met and bonded over this particular competition. The competition lasted almost 50 days, and that's how we have become pretty close friends, though we have never met. And it's a great opportunity, so nobody should miss that now. And the second one, like the third part of it would be like Vantage gave us the opportunity to interact with the corporate leaders. Like we were directly interacting with their senior leaders and global leaders. So this opportunity was just something you shouldn't miss. And I'm sure that any other competition would also give you the opportunity to have this kind of interaction and bonding. So it's very important.
I think that's very important, especially because it's very critical to network with people who are of that level in an organization. But such competitions give you an opportunity to meet them, to connect with them, and to maybe network with them for future references as well. On a closing note, guys, what final advice would you like to give to the future participants of Vantage?
Okay, I'll just tweak that a little, maybe a little bit of a serious and a fun advice to probably close the session. So I think there are three major things that I would want someone to take away from, or ideally look at a case in general. So I think the first important thing is believing in yourself and the team in general. At the end of the day, it's all about self-belief and working together. I think we've had millions of arguments throughout the case, but they were all healthy. So I think that one breakthrough you get for a case can be through a healthy argument. So you have to make sure that there is scope for this. So the second one would be, we work a lot on the case, but at the end of the day, it's the D-Day which matters. So it is important to walk into that presentation thinking you're the best team out there. So you don't know what the other teams could have presented, but make sure whatever you're presenting, you do that in the best possible way. And make sure you keep the time limit and you have your dry runs accordingly, because this is one important aspect. And I cannot stress how important it is to stay relevant to the time. And the last one would be, it is okay to accept that we do not know a few things in life. So this is what I think case competitions are all about, where you have to explore or go beyond your comfort zone. So there is a few points where we reached out to maybe seniors or people who are experts in that opinion, and you learn. So I think these are the key takeaways or suggestions that I would be eating out.
So he'd already mentioned about seeking help. So there's a lot of things that we don't know, and that I think was an important aspect that helped us throughout this competition. So we did reach out to a lot of people. Our seniors, in fact, are very helpful. So they went to help us throughout throughout the process as well, and the mentorship rounds, as well as the voice team as well. They were very accommodating, and they kept us in the loop throughout the process, which made it very enjoyable for us as well. So that is something that we should always keep in mind, because we might not know everything, but reaching out and getting as much as information possible, that does give us that does give us an edge. So yeah.
It's very important in a quiz competition to face the Q&A. So there'll be a lot of curveballs thrown at you, and questions you just did not even think about. So how do you face them? Because you know your case better than anybody else. So you got to stand your ground and understand where they are coming from, and put yourself in that shoes, and work quickly. So that's very important in my perspective.
And I think challenging each other is also really important. Like when you're initially coming up with ideas, it's very important that you challenge each other on those, because you might say that, oh, I have come up with this great idea, but how do you actually convince other people? Because if you can't convince your own teammates of the idea, there is no way you'll be able to convince a jury of those ideas. So that is important as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing such valuable pieces of advice. I am sure this is going to help future participants of Vantage a lot. Thank you so much, Shilpa, Nishka, Shreesha, and Nameeta, for staying with us today. It was great talking to you, knowing you and your story of winning the competition. We wish you the best for all your future endeavors, and we hope that you bring back many trophies home. Thank you so much. We hope to see you soon. Take care, stay safe, and stay home.